And now we're privileged to welcome artist Sam Savitt to our studio, where Al Markham and he will be looking into Sam's long, fruitful career as one of America's top equestrian artists, and how at 80 plus he remains so vital.
Sam Savitt is considered by many to be America's finest equestrian artist. Recently, we took our cameras to North Salem in Upper Westchester County, and there, in this beautiful patch of horse country, we met with Sam. He's the official artist of the United States equestrian team, and his work has appeared in magazines all over the world. He has been called a legend in his time, and his paintings have encompassed the whole world of horses, from polo to racing, from the rodeo to fox hunting. Sam has also written 15 books and has illustrated more than 135 others. As a vigorous 81-year-old, Sam is still going strong, and in recent years has been very actively involved in the American Cancer Society Horse Show and numerous appearances with school children and young people all over the country. Sam, we're delighted to have you here. Welcome.
Nice being here.
Now,
Right.
I wonder if you could tell us, how did this love of painting horses begin?
I loved horses since I was a child. And the closest thing I ever came to a horse then was, we lived down near the coal mines.
Uh-huh.
And I'd see the mules coming up with their carts loaded with coal. And then, of course, there was the milkman's horse. And what intrigued me about that was the milkman would be walking up the block, and his horse would be keeping pace with him in the street.
Stopping at each house, he knew the horse knew where to deliver the milk.
Well, as soon as the horse saw the man go into the gate or so, then he stopped. And as the man came out again,
Right.
he'd follow along.
So from that, you, when it was time for you to leave there, you spoke to a high school teacher, and he suggested Pratt Institute, I think.
Right. He said, you got to go to Pratt because Pratt makes you work. He said, I know you. He said, you'll goof off if you have a chance. He said, so I want you to go to Pratt, and if you don't meet the mark there, out you go. So that's where I went.
And when you got to Pratt, were you overwhelmed by all of that?
Oh, when I got to Pratt, I remember we had a luncheon, and I sat at a table with 3 other students who were educated in the art schools in New York and all, and they were talking about color and tones, and I didn't know what they were talking about. And I finally got up, and this is the truth. I got up and I went to where the faculty was sitting, and I saw this Mr. Boudreau. See, I remember those names. He was director of the school, and I said, I think you made a mistake. I said, I don't think I belong here. Also, I was homesick. I didn't tell him that. And he said, no, he said, you belong here. He said, the only difference between you and the other guys, he said, you have to work harder. I didn't like that either, but that's what it began. Then from then on, it was go, go, go.
But didn't you discovered after a while that nobody could do horses the way you could?
Well, when I found out that, then that kind of, what is it, a little success makes success?
Exactly.
I decided I was going to not only do better, I was going to excel in it.
And that was the beginning of horse painting.
And that was the beginning of it.
During the depth of the Depression in the 30s, when you left Wilkes-Barre, I think you told me you went on some box cars, your first trip.
Oh, well, I've hitchhiked around the country twice. I rode the rails, but I thought, geez, I could write all about that time. And I've started writing about that. I call it Another Time.
Uh-huh.
And it's about all these adventures on the road. And that's another part of my life.
I think a lot of young men rode the box cars in the 30s.
Right.
And that was your first trip out to the West.
Yeah.
Did you have any interesting experiences out there?
Oh, geez.
Did you ever go to a place called Las Vegas, New Mexico?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I was put in jail there. And there were some other people there ready to gang up on me, other hitchhikers, and this sheriff came along, and he took me to jail, and I said, I haven't done anything. He said, but they were going to do things to you.
So he took you into custody for your own protection.
Yeah, he put me there over the night. The next morning, he made up a bag, a brown bag for me. He drove me out to the highway, and he said, which way are you heading? I said, I'm heading north up to Taos, New Mexico. He said, okay, here's a good place. You'll get a ride here. He said, and don't come back.
Wonderful. So he gave you your lunch and sent you
He gave me my lunch and sent me on my way.
That's
right.
good. Now, you started off professionally after Pratt, after the war years, as an illustrator for Western pulp fiction books.
And I did that for years. You know, all all these Western adventures I've had, they all came in handy.
Good.
And I did a lot of that. And then in the 50s, I did all the covers for the comic book horses, Trigger, Champion, and Silver.
That
And
was Dell Comics, as I recall.
Yeah.
And you did covers,
illustration. And I did 140 of those. I didn't know I had done that many, but there's a collector up in Maine, and he made up a book for me and used to check with me to see that they were my things, and they came to 140.
Yeah. Now, you did one, I think you told me, of which horse was it that you did the one where he was trying to rescue the horse?
Yeah, we used to sit in an office and say, what are we going to have these horses do this month? And one of the ideas we came up was Silver rescuing a drowning horse. And I had him leaping off into the water, this horse thrashing around. And the thing that struck me funny was after I did it, I thought, what is he going to do when he gets there?
Right, that's all hands. Pull him out with his teeth or something, right?
Yeah.
All right, but we have that picture. We're showing it to our audience.
Yeah.
Sam, do you paint your subjects from memory or from photographs or
Well,
life?
no, the way I do it, I do all my drawings from memory. Because when you're doing the pulp magazines and they paid you $7 for a single page, $15 for, you had to turn out a lot of them. And you start learning how to do these things from memory. And that's the way I work. And what I do is during the year I'll have a good drawing day. I'll say, I'll just draw today. And I'll sit down with a tracing pad and pencils, no paints, no mess around, and I'll make drawings. And after the end of the day, I might have about 3 or 4 that have promise. And then I stash them away on my desk there, and I
Save them for a rainy day.
I save them for another time. And then when it's time to make a painting and I feel I want to do something, I look through them, pick out one that I really think that, could really go ahead with, and I start.
That's great. You also came across, I think, a horse named Sam Savitt.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I heard about a horse in the show circuit named Sam Savitt, and I heard he was showing in North Salem, which is, a big show stable. So I went there, and I went to his tent, and the people were there, and I said, my name is Sam Savitt, I've come to see the real Sam Savitt. So they brought him out, and he was, and I spoke to his owner. I said, how come he got that name? They said, well, she said, when I bought him, he said, when I bought him, my wife looked at him and he said, he looks like a painting of Sam Savitt. So they named him Sam Savitt.
That's great.
And somebody took a picture of me with the...
Oh, we have that picture.
Oh,
yes.
you do?
Okay, so we took a look at that. Now, Sam, I know that you have also written 15 books and illustrated many, many others.
Yeah.
Some of the books that you've written were for children or for anybody to read them. Now, you have a daughter named Vicky. I think you did a book.
Vicky and the Black Horse.
Vicky and the Black Horse.
And Vicky really was stuck on the Black Horse. She loved that Black Horse, but it wasn't hers. It was mine and her mother. And we got a pony that was really starving somewhere. And finally, she said that wasn't the kind of pony that she could ride, but we sold him. And Betty and I were sitting at the table, at breakfast table, and we saw the horse out there pacing around. And I said, and Betty said, geez, he's so upset. And I said, he'll get over it. And she said, what if he doesn't?
Because he missed the pony, the horse was...
Yeah, what if he doesn't get over it? And that was the basis of the story. In the story, Vicky is spending the whole story looking for the pony to bring back to make the Black Horse happy.
Oh, a lovely story.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Sam, I know that you do a lot of work. You're at a point in your life where you're giving back to your community in many, many ways.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of work with schools and libraries and children. And I've got a stack of letters here that I managed to get a hold of from your lovely wife, Betty. And the things that they say to you that it's so wonderful for you to come and see our enthusiastic students. And thank you again for sharing your love of horses and your talents with us. And the way you made a success out of Career Day with some of the schools that you visited and so on. I'm just wondering now if we brought an easel into the studio.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder now if you would be good enough to go over to the easel and give us a 1 or 2 minute example of the kind of thing that you do for the students when they go to school, would you?
Be happy to.
We'll go right over there with our camera, too.
One of the things I always like best is a horse grazing, because it's such a rhythmic thing. A horse usually keeps one leg back to get him a little lower to the ground. See, I'm saving that head for last. Let's get that head in.
Keeping that one leg back enables him to
To get a
stretch
little
his
lower
neck
to the
there.
ground.
Uh-huh.
And then, you know, the rest of it is just gooching it up.
Amazing how quickly we have a horse there. I could have worked on that for an hour.
There were times when I worked on it for more than an hour.
That's wonderful.
You know, I have another little drawing here. I can make of a foal. When a foal grazes, he has short legs,
Uh-huh.
and he can't get himself to the ground. So what I have him do, what he does is spreads them. Puts one leg out there, and the other leg way out there.
Isn't that interesting?
See?
You know, I've ridden through countryside many times, and I've seen that, and I didn't understand. I thought it was because the little foal was unstable on his legs, but he actually spreads them out like that so that he can stretch his neck down to the
That's
floor.
right, and then he get his neck down, and he gets those legs spread out, and he gets himself closer to the ground.
Ah,
And
that's
it's,
beautiful. That's great. Thanks, Sam. That gives us a clean idea.
Wait, there's one other idea.
What's
could
that?
do. Something with a little more action. Like, they always want me to do something. That must make an awful lot of
Go ahead.
noise.
Just leave it there. We'll take that.
We have a horse bucking. When a horse bucks,
You learned all this in watching the rodeos. Hmm?
watching horses. Even to this day, I watch my own horse, and when he's out there in the pasture grazing, I try to see how much I see of him when he turns from one way to the other. And I always say to them, we're going to put a rider on him. What shall I do, have him ride him or buck him off? And they always say buck him off, so I say, okay. So I put the rider up here. There he goes.
And there he goes.
Yeah. I put his hat up here where he was,
Right.
and there he goes,
Hat over
and
here.
there's the ground, and you know,
Look
I
at all
asked
the
it-
action that you caught in that little sketch. I mean, that's a moment of action. And we see that in so many of your paintings, how well there's something going on in each of them. There's a moment of action going on in each one of them.
you know,
That's great. Sam.
apropos of that, I asked the children, what do you want me to land them in? And they'll have all kinds of things, mud, manure. But not too long ago, one child said something I've never heard. She said, land them in toxic waste. So there it is.
All right, that did it. Come on back.
Okay.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Now, you mentioned that you have a horse.
Yeah.
And
McClory.
I saw your horse there. What is his name again?
McClory. He
McClory.
came with that name.
McClory. Okay, well, why not?
Well, you know, he's 23 years old, and I always tell him, stick around, we're going to both get old together. So I ride him a couple times a week.
You do ride a couple
Yeah.
times a week.
Yeah.
And how far out do you go?
Well, I just take him out for about an hour, and I usually jump a fence with him just to keep his hand in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's marvelous.
Yeah, well, I know the country pretty well, and I know the fences with the good approaches, that he's not going to get himself hurt, and keep him fit.
Tell me something now. How have things changed because of your age?
I've changed.
You have changed, but you wouldn't want to say better or worse, and as far as
No.
you're concerned.
Because some things that the things that pleased me maybe 10 years ago don't please me anymore.
Mhm.
And so you're always working to make that
Right.
your goal. You know,
Right.
you get up in the morning
Well-
and you say, this is the first day of my rest of my life.
Good point. Now, that brings me, I only have time to get one more question with you.
Okay?
And it's right where I want to be. we're talking to an audience of people who are in their second half.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get up in the morning, and it's difficult. It gets more and more difficult what to do and what to do with their life. What could you say to them? What would you have to say to our audience?
Well, see, with me, there's always a project that I'm working on. And I find that I'm happier when I'm working. I get maybe a little moodier if I'm not. So when I'm working or even teaching, my wife always tells me I'm at my best when I'm teaching.
Mm-hmm. So you pull out your sketch pile and you every
just
morning?
look through them, and then I find something that this is the challenge for today. And I go for it, and 3 days it's very difficult, and at the fourth day you start settling in, and you go for broke on
I
it.
love it. Every day you got to do something. Get to the project.
That's right,
Thanks
every
very
day.
much, Sam.
You're very welcome.
Very nice having you here.
Thank you, Al, for bringing us a truly inspirational interview. And thank you for joining us today. Remember to call for your free kit on telemarketing fraud. The number to call is 1-800-282-9061. See you next time.